I've got the looks and the charm of an old movie star. Cary Grant, if you will, so I find it bizarre that this girl should refuse to step into my car. She must be shy, she'll come around, it's just a matter of time. Aurora, Aurora.
Hey there, movie fans, and welcome to Screen Snark, a podcast for the movies that are in our eyes, on our minds, and in our hearts. I am Rachel Quirky Shank.
And I am Matt, a.k.a. Stormageddon.
Hello again. Welcome back, folk.
We're still doing it. We haven't given up yet.
No one's fired me, so we'll see.
No, not yet. In fact, we've been hired, and more about that at the end of the show.
We'll chat.
But we are very excited to have our guest, Nat Cassidy, here.
Yeah.
Hello! I met Nat through the wonderful Gideon Productions and the nonsense last year that was Steal the Stars. And then you also were randomly at my friend Chris and Steph's wedding.
It's true.
Because everybody knows everybody in New York.
Yeah,
It's a tiny
true.
world.
Yeah, you've been famous through friend of the podcast, Scott Thomas, for me.
OG Scotty T.
Oh, good old OG
Scotty T.
Scotty T. One day he will be here on the SCREE.
Nice. You pulled that one out.
Thank you.
And of course, we're going to chat with Nat a bit about his writing, his acting, and some other stuff. But first, we will get into what we always do, which is the most recent movies we've seen. And in true tradition of last week talking about Spider-Verse, because the week before, the episode before, Chuck had seen it.
I did.
Now.
The other Chuck. Right. That was listen, Chuck Collins, that was a very confusing episode for me because I am also known as Chuck, and I just kept going, what? In my head. So, what I do?
I used to live with a Matt. This was during the answering machine days, so we would get
you would have no idea
all the time. It's like, hey, it's me. It was very confusing.
Oh, yeah.
But our guest last time, Mark Robert Turner, saw Aquaman and talked a little bit about it. And I, too, now have seen Aquaman.
Yes.
And I can mirror everything that Patrick has said about it and Mark has said about it. It is the best, worst movie I have ever seen.
All right.
My mom loved it, so...
I mean, your mom has decent taste.
My mother has seen a comic book movie that I have not seen.
Wow.
What is happening?
Right? The world is ending.
What are you waiting for?
So I will say...
Money, and I moved recently, so it's been difficult to get to places.
To your Momoa abs.
So I will say, the greatest thing about Jason Momoa, besides him being very handsome, is that he's charming. Like, in all the scenes he's in, he's so charming. Yeah. And I also really love Amber Heard in this movie. She was just, like... She was both taking it seriously and not taking it seriously. It was just, and also at one point there was an octopus playing drums. Like, it's just.
I've heard about it.
Julie Andrews was a Kraken monster. Like, she wasn't in Mary Poppins Returns, but she was in Aquaman.
I've talked about this movie enough that I've now seen this movie, and it's very strange for me.
Well, it's funny. So I went to see it with friend of the show, Case Aiken, when I was visiting him for MacFest.
Hi, Case.
And we went with his partner, Carter. And, like, me and Case definitely enjoyed it. As fans of movies, we were like, the dialogue was dumb, and, like, the story was a little ridiculous, but it was entertaining. The colors were bright. Like, it wasn't afraid to just be a cartoon in real life. And then when we walked out of the movie, we asked Carter what she thought. She's like, I hated it. It was awful. I was like, oh, well, I can see that. But I had fun with it. I think that what I didn't realize was missing from comic book movies is... fun movies that don't necessarily take themselves that seriously.
Yeah.
It's the same reason I liked Venom when we talked about it. It's just, Jason Momoa knows what he's in. He knows the movie he's in. So does Nicole Kidman. Like, they're all kind of winking at the camera a bit. And I will never get enough of Patrick Wilson playing ridiculously comical, overdramatic characters. He's just so good at it now. And him as Orm was like... He was in the biggest drama of his career as far as his acting. And for the character, it played so well. Even though everything he said, I was just like, is anyone else hearing this? Like, this guy...
Is he taking the Eddie Redmayne route?
Pretty much, yes.
Yeah.
Which, like...
That's the way to go.
It is, honestly, for a movie like this. And also, I don't remember the name of the actor who played Black Manta, but... he was so good and compelling in the scenes when he was, more human, and then he got his armor and was shooting lasers everywhere. Like, all of those scenes were compelling, and the action was shot so well. There's this one fight scene when they're in... Is it in Italy? I think it's when they're in Italy where Amber Heard, Mera, and Aquaman are separated, and they're fighting separate groups of minions, as it were. And the fight would trail their movement and go between them. So, like, one of them's running across the roofs and then falls through a house, and then the shot will go out the window to where Aquaman is, and then show his fight with the main bad guy. And it was a really interesting way to shoot the fight scenes that felt very kinetic and frenetic, but it wasn't like a Michael Bay shaking the camera at a giant robot that's not there.
You could tell what was happening?
Yes.
Wow, legible action.
I know, right? In a comic book movie made by DC.
Whoa.
I think that I would watch any other Aquaman movie they made because I just had a good time.
No.
It was absolutely ridiculous. Like, at one point, to escape people chasing them, they hide in a whale's mouth because Aquaman can communicate and does it. Later on, spoiler alert, Amber Heard...
For the plot-heavy Aquaman.
Amber Heard gets a book of Pinocchio from a little boy and then yells at Aquaman. He's like, "You risked our life based on a book." And he's like, "Oh, that's a book? I saw it in a movie." Nothing. You're good. You're good. Nothing to do with Aquaman.
I'm trying so hard to, like, go in as blind as I can about Aquaman, but, like, I feel like I can sum this fucking movie up in 3 words now, because I'm just gonna be like, oceans and lasers. Like,
I mean, that's an accurate representation.
Like, there you go, Aquaman.
I think, all in all, like, I'm tired of going to the movies and then walking out either being confused or bored or upset.
Mad.
And, like, for most of the DC movies, that's the case. Like, there are high points, but for the most part, it's like, well, that scene was good and that was okay, but, like, why did they CGI Henry Cavill's mustache off? Like,
it's nice to hear that they went into a movie knowing you shouldn't take it seriously instead of deciding that in post.
Right.
Like, let's recut this as a comedy.
Yeah, and I haven't seen Suicide Squad either, which is the one they did that with, but I think
it's as good as you've heard.
Yeah, I'm sure.
This is Katana. Her sword captures the souls of all the people that that line I'm obsessed with. And
because they just explain her powers.
Yeah, so straight-faced and so, like, badass and aggressive. Like, they're talking about the plan in, like, a fucking Ocean's 11 movie or something like that.
Yeah, it's so...
Yeah, that's the only one I have not seen yet.
It was like, I've never been so mad at, like, needle drops, you know, where, like, the music starts in something, than I was, like, by the point that they were getting their gear in the prison yard, and, like, Eminem comes on, and I'm just like, I hate this movie, and it's just like, I rage quit this movie. I can't, this movie is so bad. Like, this is terrible, this is poorly done. I'm mad about Suicide Squad again.
You said you wouldn't get like this. Yeah, I think also Aquaman's soundtrack was great, mostly because they weren't afraid to insert ridiculous pop songs that totally, like, in the moments they were introduced, you're just like, oh, well, okay, here we are now. Like,
is there
totally
a nautical theme to the soundtrack?
Not really that I can tell. I'm sure there's some single by some popular pop artist that was about water.
Didn't Pitbull do...
Oh, yes, that's right.
Yeah.
Pitbull did a cover of Africa.
That's right.
And
like, we needed another one of those this year.
Bananas.
So that's the scene I'm thinking about, actually. So they're flying over the Sahara and jump out of a plane. It's the scene you've seen in the trailer where she jumps out and he goes, "Redheads," and follows her out the plane, and they dive into the sand. But as they're flying over the Sahara, that's the song that's playing.
All right.
Because, they're in Africa.
Yeah, because you gotta.
I like it when songs describe the thing that I'm seeing.
Right?
I just find that comforting.
And I was actually not expecting a cover by Pitbull, but I got it, and I wasn't mad about it. So if I had to sum up Aquaman in 3 words, it would be so much fun.
So much fun.
Because I had a good time. I know that the dialogue was ridiculous and bad and almost nonsensical at times, but it didn't matter because the story was conveyed so well from scene to scene that and it never felt long. Like, there are bad movies that are good. Like, I liked Venom a lot. I thought it was ridiculous. But there are definitely scenes where I'm going, what are we doing? But that never happened in Aquaman. It was just scene after scene after scene after scene after scene of something that was engaging until it was done. I was like, oh, it's over.
Yes.
Okay.
And on that, I must make an official Screen Snark ruling. No one else can bring Aquaman to the table. No one. Myself included.
Even if you see it, you can't talk about it.
Even if it's the last movie, even if, like, the last word of the last credit rolls on Aquaman 2 seconds before we hit the ground running on Screen Snark, I will not talk about Aquaman. I'm sorry. I'm not going to do it.
That's fair.
Like, it's just
legit.
It's not going to, because it's been 3 episodes now.
It's true. Oh, that's right. Chuck mentioned it as well.
And we talked about it on Infinity this week.
Oh, that's right.
I'm done with Aquaman.
No more Aquaman. Well, then, why don't you tell us about what you saw most recently?
As some folks may know, I've been in the middle of a grueling move. Just a lot of my life is in tatters. In a good way. I'm very excited to live in a new place, but consumable media has been very limited for me. I've been binging The Good Place because it's like bite-sized episodes.
Sure.
So I went from
and
watching
it's amazing.
none of The Good Place to in the middle of season 3 of The Good Place.
Nicely done.
Because it's just, it's delightful. I love
amazing.
it. But this is a movie podcast, I guess, unless I change the ruling where I'm like, but this was on a television screen.
We talked about shows, but still, movie.
Yeah. But, so I just needed something, like, familiar and comforting to just get me through, the stress of relocating. So I watched Monty Python and the Holy Grail.
A classic.
Oh, so good. And I can still quote as much of the movie as you think I can.
It doesn't go away.
It doesn't. It's the music of that comedy where you're just like, oh yes, the exact notes of the way he says, your mother was a hamster and your father smelt of elderberries. Just like that. And it's so funny that is a movie. Because it is just sketches, sketch after sketch
really
after sketch.
is.
But it still has this very wonderful, like, weirdo, like, hero's journey. And it's something I had never really thought about. I'm like, yeah, Arthur is kind of like going through some shit in the middle of peasants who know more about economics and socio-political structures. Or women who weigh the same as a duck. It's just, it's weird to think that I'm now talking about this on like a level of someone who watches movies because it's been one of my like obsessive movies for so long. Like when I was a teen, I just wanted to like have the transcript of it and just read it and like do it out loud, like it was a play that I loved. And it's just been like a part of my entire like being and like the way I feel about making comedy. Like I love just like the absurdity of it. And it's I was nervous that it wasn't going to age well for me. I thought like it was going to be really uncomfortable because I know a lot of the history of like early Monty Python was very like homophobic, and Graham Chapman was a closeted gay man at the time, and like reading the history of that was weird, but I mean the product still stands for me. It's still just really weird and really wacky and fun, and an interesting moment where some creatives who like didn't have a budget went, how do we make this work? How do we make this work?
All
just
right.
coconuts, like none of the English castles will let us in, so we'll just use like the same 2 that are privately owned, and then we'll make models, I guess, and then we'll comment on how they're models, and just like that like delightful insanity of the whole movie is just. I'm glad that it was the movie I decided to watch for this, because I did watch this specifically because I was like, I gotta talk about a movie. What did I watch? But yeah,
I feel like that anyone of a certain age, if they have a comedic bone in their body, love that movie.
Yeah.
And like it's funny because I remember when Family Guy got really big and the whole cutaway joke thing was common. Like everyone's like, this is so fresh. No one's ever done this. I'm like, Monty Python's been doing it for years. That's their shtick. Right. And like half of the Holy Grail is like, Camelot. And then people dancing and doing crazy stuff. Oh, let's not go to Camelot. 'Tis a silly place.
Yeah.
Like that's half that movie is cutaway jokes or last minute bits. I love how absurd and almost it has a straightforward story, but it is very piecemeal, sketch-like. And I never, as a kid, I always thought it was a very fluid story for whatever reason. And as an adult rewatching it, I'm like, oh, it is kind of just like sketch after sketch.
Yeah.
Like,
sketch, yeah.
Because they're fairly isolated between each other. There's some bleed over between scenes, but for the most part, it's like, here's a thing, and then here's a thing, and then here's a thing.
And I really forgot how much of the animation there is.
Oh, yeah.
You
quite
know,
a bit.
like the lead-ins to the Tale of Sir Galahad or the Tale of Sir Lancelot, and it's something that I like, because, again, like, the comedy of the pythons is just so rhythmic and musical for me. That because they're not to say the animation isn't like rhythmic or musical, like the springing sound of the monks jumping into the pool like is still very like evocative and funny. But it's something that's like, of all these really, really great things, this is like the great thing that I'm not taking away. So it was actually kind of delightfully surprising to be like, oh, right, there was all this animation in it. You know, like not just God, but like in between scenes and the sun jumping. I totally forgot about. And I was like, this is great. Like they did it.
So does it hold up after all this time?
Oh, it holds up
When,
so
do you remember
well.
the last time you saw it?
I feel like the last time I saw it was...
For me, it's probably been 5 or 6 years.
A few years ago.
Yeah.
I think I watched it in my first New York City apartment. Yeah, which was almost 7 years ago? Something like that.
You can flub it a little bit.
Yeah, I'm trying to think, like, when the last time it was like, oh, I'm going to sit down and watch Holy Grail.
Yeah.
Like, I've watched Road to El Dorado more times than I watched Holy Grail.
Because it is one of those movies that, like, it's just, you can press play in your head right now.
It's like an earworm, you know? It's just like, I don't need to see it to, like, hear it and know it and, like, and get it. But I also probably watched it obsessively as a young person, like just again and again and again.
It's an interesting bit of synchronicity too, because Sean Williams and Abe Goldfarb were just talking about this on Twitter, and I was going to jump in and didn't because I had other things to do. But they were talking about
what, you had more important things to do than Twitter?
I had other tweets to and shout about.
Makes sense.
But they were talking about the the farcical aquatic ceremony, come and see the violence inherent in the system scene with the bloody peasant. With Dennis, who's 37, which is what I turned this year. So I posted that scene when I turned 37, because I'm 37. I'm not old. But they were making the point, and weirdly, I was just having a similar experience because that track came up on shuffle on my iPod the other day. But they were talking about that scene and how when you watch that scene as a young Monty Python fan, it's the music that you're so into and the silliness. And isn't it funny that this peasant is taking this king to task like so hyper articulately? And then you watch it as an adult and you're actually like, this argument makes a lot of sense. This is actually a really profound scene.
He's making a lot of sense.
There was something so like heart-wrenching about it because I'm like, oh my God, yes, like, oh, my sweet little leftist heart is just like, yes, Dennis, yes. That was crazy. And I've noticed that a lot in media, especially like revisiting things from like an earlier time, just like how much the conversation is still the same. Like people are still trying to like fight for their... This is a weird jumping off point after Monty Python, but people are still like fighting for the same rights that they've always been fighting for, you know, and having these same discussions. And like,
I just read a book this weekend. It's a very problematic book, but it's a good book. Like, it's a sort of book that you are a fan of in spite of other knowledge.
Right.
But it's called Song of Kali by Dan Simmons, the guy who wrote The Terror. And it's this like nasty 300-page horror jaunt into Calcutta. And it came out in, I think it came out in the very early 80s or the late 70s. I think it came out in the early 80s. It's set in the late 70s. And there was a character who is wearing a t-shirt that says "A woman's place is in the house and Senate." And it was just like such a weird bit of frisson to be like, we see that shirt now. This book is decades old, and it's used as like a signifier of like, look how radical and lefty this character is. It was definitely a moment where I was like, God, nothing ever fucking changes.
No.
It's really, and also with comedies, I'm always afraid that like I'm gonna find something that I'm like, oh, I can't laugh at this anymore.
The Lumberjack song, I feel that way. Like, I watch that now and I'm like, why? There's nothing funny about a man who wants to wear women's clothing at home.
Yeah.
Like, that's great.
And so I'm always afraid, like, going back to Holy Grail or some other stuff that I'll experience that, which I guess is not a bad thing. It represents growth. But, like, you know, it's hard not to be sad when someone you idolize or something you idolize turns out to be made by a shitty person or that person is a shitty person. Like, at the end of the day, you don't need them and fuck them because you can get other art elsewhere.
Exactly,
But it's still a little sad if you were very close to the work they did.
Yeah.
I found myself pull away from the comedian Christopher Titus, not because he's a bad person in any way, but because he's definitely more conservative, and I said some stuff about video games where like, oh, all kids who play shooting games are zombies and pedophiles and blah blah blah, like just raging against the nonsense in the media, but to a point where something he doesn't understand, so he's saying whatever the fuck he wants about it. And I was like, dude, that's my bread and butter. I love video games. Like, I get it. You're mad about whatever nonsense is happening in the White House and with, all of this other stuff, and I get that, but like, now I'm just going to look at you as like that guy who doesn't think before he speaks, and that's a shame because there are plenty of comedians who do.
Yeah.
Which is a bummer. And I've found that that's happened with quite a few comedians since I've grown up. So it's good to hear that the Holy Grail seems to still hold up.
At least for me, it's so irrelevant in so many ways because it's set in England in the 1600s. Right. So I don't think it's really gonna like do anything. I got kind of nervous about the Galahad scene though, where I was like, oh no, is this gonna get real weird? Is this gonna be really uncomfortable for me? And I was like, actually no, because it's a comedic sketch about women with like all this agency, and they're just like, oh, we lit the grail-shaped beacon for boys and we want boys to come here. And like that was actually kind of cool, and I love that. The only problem was the cut, the quick cut where it was like, well, at least ours wasn't all pussy jokes, and I'm like, there really weren't any pussy jokes in it. It's just like seductress jokes. Like, but okay, I mean, I get it. Like that word's just evocative. Fine, I get it.
How would you give a 3-word? What would your 3-word review for Monty Python and the Holy Grail be?
I think I kind of summed it up in a lot more words, but I think I would say movie as earworm.
Okay. Yeah. There you go.
Yeah, because it's just like.
It just stays with you.
It just gets you.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those old comedies that I can quote from beginning to end, more or less. Like that, Mallrats, Ghostbusters, like. They're just things that are on a track in your head that at any moment you could pull out, and the plates are still on the table. Yeah. Things like that.
Especially Monty Python. Like I literally had it come up on shuffle. Like I would listen to clips from that movie all the time.
That's awesome.
They had all their albums that would just have like clips from the movies and the sketches and stuff like that.
I love that so much. Did you guys know? My IMDb.
Yeah, your trivia. Please
my maybe true or not trivia. When they were filming, they actually had a really difficult time filming this one. A lot of the Pythons agree that it was like the hardest one to shoot. And one of the craziest stories was when they were shooting on location, they were all sharing like this tiny little like hotel. And the hotel only had so much like hot water, and because of when they were filming and what they were wearing, they were mostly like cold and wet just all the time. So as soon as they wrapped for a day, it was like this like bum rush of everyone trying to get the only hot water for a shower. And I'm just like, no, I get it.
That sounds legit.
And a lot of them say that Life of Brian is better. A lot of the Pythons have stated that.
And it's funny because I don't like Life as Brian as much.
I love Life of Brian.
I like it, but
it's not as musical as Monty Python.
It's more of a movie.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. It seems like Holy Grail sits in the middle between Life of Brian, which is like a narrative with some sketches in it, and like Meaning of Life, which is just pure sketches.
Yeah. Oh man, have you guys seen And Now for Something Completely Different, which is just them like redoing all the
show,
but for movies? I watched that with like an old friend. And we lost our minds because I'd not seen these sketches. Because like I didn't have access to Flying Circus, so this was the first like real experience I got in that first sketch where it's like how to hide and just keep blowing things up, and I'm just like, why is this the most perfect thing that's ever happened?
So funny.
The parrot sketch will always be my favorite sketch.
What's you guys should if you haven't, I highly recommend going back and watching old Flying Circus too, because totally. Some of it is so amazingly bad.
Yeah.
Sure.
In like a fascinating way. Not in like an old SNL way where you watch like the 75 to 80 cast and you're like, how is this a comedy?
Is this? Yeah, right.
How did this not get canceled?
Yeah.
What are we doing?
Like Monty Python is like there will be sketches where it's just like, and now Immanuel Kant will argue with Friedrich Nietzsche, and they'll only be using Oscar Wilde quotes, and you'll just be like,
What
am I even watching?
That's like, what was it? It's the Kids in the Hall.
Yeah.
Watching old reruns of the Kids in the Hall on Comedy
Kids in the
Central.
Hall.
Like, there were sketches where I'd be like, what just happened?
Like, yeah, I feel like
Yeah.
sometimes they'd be dramas. Like,
And
you'd
I-
just be like, I feel sad. for
Right.
this character.
And like all of these dudes playing ladies, playing dudes, and doing it well, and not like it wasn't a gag that they were wearing women's clothes.
characters.
They were just characters,
Yeah.
and like characters you invested in. It was so weird sometimes. I was like,
I will never forget this one Kids in the Hall sketch that was about a guy who dropped out of high school. It was Bruce McCullough, and he had these like giant Coke bottle glasses, and he would stare at a ceiling fan, and it was shot very much like fucking Apocalypse Now almost. And he would just drive a motorcycle, and he had a shovel, and he would just pick up roadkill. That was the sketch. And it was like 7 to 8 minutes long.
of course it was Bruce McCullough.
Amazing.
Yeah, and it was just like this amazing character study of this like fucking Tom Waits song.
And then you're just like, what do I do with this new information?
And then
I
a
don't
commercial.
understand.
Yeah.
So Nat, what was your movie that you most recently
Nat.
watched?
I watched a little film called Aquaman. And it's about a guy who lives under the sea.
I'm dead.
I
and
want it to be the truth.
I know, me
I was
too.
really surprised that he's Odin's son.
Yeah.
Anthony Hopkins was great.
And
No,
then they had to destroy the Ring of Power.
yeah, it was really
like,
convoluted.
what?
It's
They threw it
17
into a
hours long.
volcano.
Yeah.
And then the little guy chases it, and then he dies.
Yeah, and then there's a musical number about like
This
your
lumberjack
friends
who
and like
dresses in women's clothing, and it really wasn't that funny.
crazy.
I watched a movie called Satan's Slaves.
Satan's slaves.
Because I bring in the quality shit for you guys.
Perfect.
appreciate it.
I'm for
this,
it.
this is it's an Indonesian movie. It came out it was released in 2017, but it was released in the States in 2018, so it's very recent. It's a remake / prequel to a movie called Satan's Slave, which is another Indonesian cult classic that came out in 1982. And it is a really good, creepy. I'm a horror writer, by the way. Everybody listening. I should even go further than that. I'm not just a horror writer. I'm a horror consumer. Like that is, if I'm left alone, I'm watching a horror movie. If I'm reading something, I'm reading a horror book. All my scripts are horror. My books are horror. It's just the realm in which I live. I particularly love foreign horror, and especially Asian horror. It's just one of my favorite subgenres of film. This one in particular is a really good, creepy, slow-ish burn. It's not so slow as to be like ponderous. It moves pretty well, but it's about a family of 5, mom, dad, and then family of 6, mom, dad, and then 4 kids. An older daughter who's like early 20s, a like 16-year-old son, and then a 10-year-old son and a 6-year-old son. All the actors are phenomenal.
Yeah.
And mom is a formerly famous like pop singer. This is set in the 80s, and she was a singer in like the 60s.
Cool.
Okay.
And she's got like a very like, almost like Motown sort of vibe.
Cool.
That sort of like just pop sort of sound from the 60s. But she's very sick. She's been really sick for about 3 years, and she's up in the guest room dying, basically. She's a total invalid. She can only communicate via a bell. And the family is destitute, and they're trying to figure out how to survive. And like the movie starts with the eldest daughter going to the music publishers and just like begging them, are there any royalties? Are any of her songs selling? We hear them on the radio all the time, and of course she gets lowballed and has no money. One of the amazing things about this movie too is that everybody's so likable.
Really?
Like it starts.
Cool.
The next scene is the teenage son, the eldest son, saying goodbye to his motorcycle before he sells it, and you never even get a whiff of resentment because he's just like, this is what I gotta do, and this everyone's putting on the best face they can for this, so it's really endearing. The kids are super cute. The dad looks like Mads Mikkelsen, which is very interesting.
Whoa.
Like the Indonesian Mads Mikkelsen. He's very handsome. So I'll only discuss what happens in Act 1, so as to not spoil too much. But the mom dies,
Right.
And they're devastated. And then shit starts to get real creepy. They start hearing the bell more and more again, her little tinkly bell. Their house, of course, overlooks the cemetery.
Of course.
And the little kids start seeing things in the cemetery,
Like
walking around at night. And eventually you find out that the mom could not conceive, and so she made a deal with a fertility cult of Satanists who would agree to basically get her pregnant, but when her youngest child turns 7, they have to give that child up to the cult. And the kids start doing the math, and they realize that there's 6.5 years in between each of them, and the youngest kid is about to turn 7. So now they have to figure out what to do before this cult comes and claims him. It gets real fucked up. It gets real tense. Some of the imagery is fantastic. One of the many things I love about foreign horror is that it's this window into other cultures that you don't normally get. And there's something about horror in particular that is so revealing to a culture's neuroses and deepest fears and stuff like that. / also it's just this great experiment in realizing how all cultures are the same and we're all scared of the same stuff.
Right.
We just use different iconography to dress it up and stuff like that.
Exactly.
But this is one of the really very few explicitly Muslim horror movies I've ever seen. I can only think of a handful of other ones. So there's a scene where the daughter is... They're very much not a religious family, too. They're encouraged to get more religious, to try and get rid of these spirits that they think they're finding. So the daughter goes to pray at one point and gets tangled up in her prayer shawl, and a ghost starts coming in under it. It's iconography you don't normally see, because even if it's a foreign horror movie, usually it's still kind of dripping with Christian iconography and stuff like that. So it was really refreshing to see that kind of slant on it.
That's cool.
Apparently, I haven't seen the original, the 1981 original Satan's Slave, but apparently that one is even more explicitly religious, and it's about another family that is very atheistic and winds up having to use the Quran to drive these demons out and stuff like that. So it's I think the director's name is Joko Anwar. Satan's Slaves. It's on Shudder.
I was about to ask. Sounds like it's on
And
Shudder.
how did you come across this? Is it just in your queue, something you
I always have many antennae out for whatever horror movies are making a splash, particularly in the foreign markets, and this one was definitely one of them. There were a handful of movies last year that were watch this as soon as it comes out. Most of them usually do tend to come out on Shudder now. Shudder's really made a name for itself.
Yeah.
Another one was it's called Terrified. That is in it was shot in Buenos Aires. That is another really cool haunted house movie. There were a couple other ones that were just of that class. So usually they were made 2 years before. Now they're hitting the domestic market. Mm-hmm. So I'm just always. I'm on the lookout.
I'm always fascinated talking to people who like horror movies. When we had Victor Devon on our first episode, he's also a big horror fan and talked about horror movies. But it's not. I'm a wuss. I can't watch horror movies. They give me nightmares. I think it depends on the horror movie. If it's campy enough, then I can go, well, that's not real, and then it doesn't bother me. But the thing about a lot of modern horror is that it looks and feels realer than it ever has, and so that gets it. And it's funny too, there are some things that could be labeled horror, like your book, which we'll talk about later, Still the Stars, and the podcast that's connected to it, can be considered horror, but not all of it was horror. Mm-hmm. And then, depending on what character you side with, maybe it's not so much. And, so those kind of thriller things I tend to like more. Yeah. But straight up scary things, I can't watch, but I'm always interested to hear other people talk about them.
I feel for me, it's a lot more... emotional manipulation. I love having my emotions toyed with. I don't like having them straight up manipulated. I feel like I've talked about this a bunch, just my feeling about jump scares.
Right.
Where I feel the same way about jump scares that I feel about tearjerkers, where I'm just you are forcing an emotion that you could have gotten from me through nuance and artistry.
There's no catharsis.
It's just oh well now it's why I don't do like haunted houses, because again, it's like that same idea of like we're building and then it's blah blah, but it's like you didn't really earn that with me, and I feel a little betrayed. But what I'm loving is sort of like that return to like the way like 70s horror would go, where it's just like this creeping dread of just like, you know, like I started to get back into horror through movies like It Follows and The Babadook, where it was just like, this is just this like sorrow and this dread that's just like, and also the return to allegory, which I love about horror now, where it's like this is a telling of something very primal for us through the lens of sexual awakening or mourning the loss of your husband or race relations in America, you know, just like that idea of like, this is fear of the other and let's explore it. Like that idea that English horror movies are set in cities, but American horror movies are set in the country because of how America and Manifest Destiny and like stealing a land from people and like the land fighting back. And then with England, it's industrialism, like taking away the simplicity of like the pastoral life. And it's really cool. And I'm like really interested to see like more of what horror is in other countries, because it's the same story but told with different dressing. I think that's neat.
Well, that's a good. That's actually a really good point.
I'll see myself out.
That's actually a really good point.
When does your book come out?
Never.
Horror is neat.
But no, actually, that's a good point, because when Chuck Collins was on and we talked about Get Out, like that was a horror movie I loved because it was about something that I don't know a lot about, obviously, you know, and so it's an experience that I'm not familiar with, and so that one also, again, there were no jump scares really. It was just this growing dread and this like it earned everything it got out of me, and that's why I want to see. I think the new one is called Us that Jordan Peele's doing. I want to see that too.
That trailer is already one of the best horror movies of the year.
Right. Well, also my favorite moment about that trailer is the one comedy beat where they're talking, where they're listening to the older rap song, and the younger one of the kids who's old enough to know, like, oh, isn't this about drugs? He's like, shut up, just enjoy the song. Like this moment of older young people coming to grips with music that might be not appropriate for their kids, but they love because they're classics. And I really enjoyed that moment, and shoveling that moment into that amazing trailer that still hit all the right horror beats. Like that's the kind of horror I'm interested in, and
it's always been there. The jump scares are to horror movies what, like, you know,
fart jokes.
Yeah, they're but like not good fart jokes, not the elegant fart jokes.
Not the ones that have like just an air of class.
Yeah.
Or they're like what fucking, you know, and no offense, because I loved a lot of this, but it's also like what nu metal did to like rock and roll.
Oh yeah, sure.
Like it turned it into, oh, that's all that is.
Yeah.
So like there was that period in like the early 2000s where it's like, that's all the rock and roll you're getting, is it's gonna be something like that. And jump scares really took over like the mass perception of what a horror movie is. I deal with this with my wife all the time, who is also not a horror fan at all. And constantly talking about movies, and she'll be like, well, I don't consider that a horror movie. And I'll be like, it is a horror movie.
I feel like the distinction for me is torture porn versus horror.
Yeah, I think torture porn and jump scares I have no patience for.
Which is a very small amount.
Right.
Yeah, but like a really predominant amount for like...
Gets a lot of coverage.
Like the time I was coming up in like my movie understanding, where I was like, oh, horror movies are just...
Well, because also Saw was one of the biggest box office hits at that time, and so everyone wanted to do that. Like
my favorite horror movie of all time. I do not like torture porn movies at all. I find them incredibly boring. But one of my very favorite horror movie of all time is considered to be a torture porn movie. So it's interesting to see how that term can kind of gloss over some of the nuances.
Sure.
So, you know, I'm sure after I said that crap about nu metal, there were 9,000 people listening being like,
excuse me,
that's a
there's
bullshit
so much
term.
nu metal that
Wait, hold on. 9,000 people.
Yeah.
I hope so.
Guys, I bring a very big audience.
I know. I'm very excited.
Glad.
So Nat, if you had to review this movie in 3 words, how would you do that? What would your 3 words be? And they don't have to be a
Don't have
sentence.
to be a sentence.
I just like
any
sentences.
word.
Jason Momoa's abs. No,
That's how I will review every movie
Right,
going
exactly.
forward. Jason
I give it
Momoa's
5
abs.
out of 6 abs. I'm gonna go with Strong, hot Java, because it's set on the island of Java.
All right.
I like that.
Yeah.
Good, nice.
Yeah.
Excellent.
A little
Well
topographical humor for you.
Someone here's a writer.
done. Someone here's a writer.
Someone's
He
impressive.
is. So, as I said earlier, Nat, I met you through the wonderful world of Steal the Stars, they came out last year, right? Feels like forever ago.
2017.
No, 2017. It just feels like it's been around forever. And so my first experience with you was actually hearing you as the character Lloyd on the podcast. I wanted to ask, with Steal the Stars specifically, so you've been acting for a long time. Had you done VO work before that too?
Commercial VO,
Okay.
mostly.
And did you have to audition for Lloyd? Were you always going to be a character on the podcast because you were writing the book? Like, how did that come to be?
Thankfully, Mac was writing that role for me in mind. We had been Mac, Jordana, Sean, and I had been getting together for a few months, maybe like 4, 5, 6 months, some number of months before we got the deal for Steal the Stars, because we had been Mac had already had his successes with The Message, and Life After I think was like just coming out or just finished its run or something like that. And so the four of us, they had their, and continue to have their theater company, Gideon Productions.
Right.
I have my own theater company, Tin Drum, and we've been producing around each other for a decade at this point. So we're very familiar with each other's work, and we're very excited to work with each other and stuff like that. So the four of us decided to try and start an audio podcast company, which would be called Gideon Productions. And so this was before Steal the Stars was even a thing. We started bringing in scripts that each of us were writing to the Williams' kitchen table, and we would just read them. And you know, I was writing one. Mac started writing Steal the Stars. Sean was writing one. Jordana was writing one, and we got like 3 episodes a piece into our various stories that we were just reading to each other and figuring out our business plan and stuff like that. When Tor approached us and was like, "We want to work with you guys," and that's how Steal the Stars began. So there had already been some of it that was at least in a nascent form, kind of being curated and cultivated and stuff like that. So I already knew, even before we got the green light, that I was going to be playing Lloyd.
Oh, cool.
Unless, you know, the powers that be were like, we've got Matthew McConaughey, and he's going to be playing Lloyd, and how can you argue with that?
No, I think you do better than that, personally.
I do, too. Thanks. But yeah, so, and then it wasn't until probably a month after we got the green light and started pre-production for Steal the Stars that I got hired to write the novel. So that was even farther into the process.
So
Wow.
the podcast came first, and
Yeah.
then the novel essentially followed shortly after.
Yeah, and the writing process was, to borrow a term, bananas.
Yeah, I remember Mac telling me that like you guys were checking in all the time, and like there was a lot of conversation back and forth to make sure that like the stories were lining up.
We basically wrote like nose to nose because the production, the period of production was so tight that basically we got the green light, and then there was we had like, I think Mac had 3 months to write it, and then we started recording, and then we had to release it like 2 months after that or something. I might be getting the numbers a little wrong, but it was
Something
very
like
tight.
Yeah.
And I didn't get hired until Mac had written, I think he was already 3 or 4 episodes in. So then I got hired and basically had to play catch up, and I caught up before he probably wrote the 5th episode. And then from the 5th episode on,
Just in tandem.
yeah, he would turn in the first draft of an episode. I would novelize it. And then he would do his rewrites. I would do my rewrites.
Interesting.
So, like, I didn't know where it was going at all as I was novelizing it, because once we started releasing things, all the scripts were written, but I had to have my final draft of the book turned in I think right around when we launched,
Right.
because it was the only way it was going. The whole plan was that the book was going to be published basically in concert with the last episode.
Right, so that way...
I had a hard deadline,
Oh,
because
wow.
if they were going to physically print and bind copies, there had to be like 3 months or something like that.
Yeah.
So I, I think I think my final draft of the manuscript was turned in, and we'd had like maybe 2 passes of the script or something like that. So it was very much like, what are you doing? What am I doing? All right.
Wow.
Do you know where this plot thread is going? No, neither do I. All right. And what was really edifying is that Mac and I, we eat from the same trough of influences, basically. Mac is very much a sci-fi guy. I'm very much a horror guy. But I'll write sci-fi, he'll write horror. Like, we come to the same influences, basically. And so there were some things, even if I didn't know where it was going, I could tell just from the rhythm of what he was writing that, like, this is probably going to turn into this sort of plot twist, or this is going somewhere like this, because that's what I would do with these ingredients. So it was actually really fun to see all the seeds that I had laid down pay off at the end of the book that I didn't know were going to be seeds, but it was just like a thing that because, when you're writing a novelization, you gotta write a lot more words. So I would like expound upon a thing that Mac, mentions kind of briefly in the script, and I'd be like, well, that feels like an important thing that could be fun to draw on later. And then suddenly, like, that would wind up being an important thing.
Yeah. I would say, like, without any spoilers for those who haven't listened. By the way, if you haven't listened to Steal the Stars and read it, please do both.
Please do.
What are you waiting for?
But
this podcast to be done.
Oh,
yeah,
right.
they have to wait till this
valid.
podcast's over.
Yeah.
But I remember, like, Steal the Stars as a podcast became like appointment television, but as a podcast where me and my spouse would sit at the table, download the new episode, and listen to it together. Wow. And I remember listening to the final episode and the ending being what it was, and, like, my immediate reaction was like, oh my God, like, my world is shattered. And she was just so angry. She's like, what? I can't believe how? And so, like, the fact that, of course, the book couldn't come out till after the show, because people could devour the book in an afternoon and be like, I know how it's going to end. But, like, while you were writing, did you see any of the ending stuff coming?
Yes and no, which made it really fascinating. Like, I would add these, like, little dream moments for the main character was Dak, and the book is told through her perspective, and so I gave her a bunch of dream kind of moments and stuff like that where she would see a thing happening that wound up, like, really buttonholing into what winds up happening.
That's really cool.
So there were all sorts of little moments like that where I didn't know, just for lack of a better term to say it, like, I didn't know, like, the trivial facts of what was going to happen. They're very much not trivial. It's a huge, amazing ending. But like, I didn't know the face that the ending was going to wear, but I knew the expression it was going to have.
Interesting.
And then there were some things that there were a few things we had to change. Like, because again, I started writing 4 episodes in or something like that, but the book had to have a very specific place, because you're writing a book, so what else are you going to talk about? But, like, where are we?
Yeah, what's the location? Yeah. Where is it? What's going on?
So I had this huge, in the first draft, I had this huge, I put all this import into where specifically it was, and I had, like, some book-only adventures that were going to happen because of the place. But then one of the scripts winds up mentioning where it is, and it is not where I was going.
Oh, no.
So we had to, like, just rip all that stuff out and be like, no, all right, we'll set it there. We wound up figuring for the best because the book was over word limit anyway. So I saved you guys from another 10,000 words, probably.
All right. Wow.
So you're welcome.
Thank you very much.
As a barely literate person, thank you. I appreciate it.
I'm always looking out for the.
I watch movies.
We appreciate it.
Books are hard.
I wanted to ask, because you've written other things,
Yeah.
and you work on plays and other things. Was writing this book, especially as a horror fan and a fan of sci-fi, was it dramatically different from other works that you've done in a similar vein, or?
It was, yeah. It was actually, I found it really interesting. I started writing books and short stories pretty young, like 9, 10 or something like that. And terrible. They're all just atrocious.
So no collection later on with all of them?
If I get really desperate, maybe. But hopefully not, because I would not wish that on... Like, I was writing in the word processor days of early Windows, where you could just press, like, Shift F7 and get thesaurus. And being a child, I was very self-conscious of being a child, so I would thesaurus-size every fucking word. So it just became gobbledygook of this tiny creature trying to sound smart. But I was also an actor. I've been acting since I was 5.
And so did both of those both came into form around the same time? Like, you've been doing both?
Yeah. But I was primarily interested in the classics as an actor. Like, I've been doing Shakespeare for most of my entire life. And that's kind of what I thought I would always do. And, Kenneth Branagh, Henry V came out when I was 7 or something like that. So I was like, that's my career path. That's what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
But then by the time I moved to the city, I really became disenfranchised with the whole scene, and it just stopped, like, speaking to me. I stopped being interested in telling the same 37 stories over and over again.
Right.
And craving diversity of experience and voice and stuff like that. So I started... it never occurred to me until my early 20s to start writing plays, even though I was in plays all the time. So I started writing plays in like 2006 or something like that. And it was, that kind of took over my life for, a decade or so. And then it was around 2015, 2016 where the itch to write books again, like, not only came back on, but like scabies level. I was just like, I gotta write a book. I gotta write books. So I started writing books again. And it was something like that was always just kind of in the back of my mind. I've always had, notes for novels and, the first 5 pages of 1,000 different prose works and stuff like that. It just wasn't something I was like compelled to finish for a long time. But then for some reason a couple of years ago, it just kind of took over. And I was in the middle of writing the beginnings of what I thought was going to be my first book when I got offered to do Steal the Stars.
Oh, wow.
So it was a really fortuitous thing of, like, that old saw about luck being opportunity meets preparedness or whatever the fuck it is. It wound up kind of being that, where I was just like, yeah, I really want to write books. And I'm feeling the need to express myself in that sort of music. And the opportunity came along, and it really did start to feel like, speaking a language that I was raised with, but just hadn't spoken in a long time. So it was rusty.
Yeah.
I'm not proud of some of that first draft, but just the actual narrative mechanics of describing a thing started to really feel comfortable and like coming home to a thing. One of the reasons why I wound up writing it too was that Mac. It was kind of offered to Mac first
to write the book and the podcast.
Just kind of a like, if you wanna, there's
you
this
can do
option
both,
too.
yeah.
We publish books, and Mac was like, I think the way he phrased it was like, I just don't feel like I have a prose narrative voice. That's just not a medium that I dabble with. And because I was kind of feeling precocious and like working on that narrative voice myself, that was part of what made me go, well, I'll try. I had to audition for it, basically.
Of course.
I had to turn in a few sample chapters before they hired me. But that was kind of the confluence of events that led me to being like, I'll try it. I can write a book. And here we are today.
Here we are today. I also wanted to ask, did you always want to play either really slimy, skittish people or like horrible humans?
That's like asking if I wanted to be a brunette. That's just how I'm born, baby.
Well, I mean, what I did love about your reel is that the characters are very diverse. Like, you're not actually playing the same character in every one of these procedurals. My favorite, I think, is the hired lawyer scene where like they're explaining all this stuff, and they're like, and so tell us about erasers, and the blank look that goes over your face is so perfect. I'm just like, oh, that must have been fun. Like, I'm sorry, do you know who you hired?
Yeah, just being in a room with Rose Leslie and Mazer and like just a cast of all stars, and you're just like, hi.
I'm just the guy.
I'll be your jerk off for the week, just being a slime ball.
Do you go on a lot of auditions over the course of the year to book stuff like that?
Yeah, it tends to be between the commercial work and the legit work. Yeah, it winds up being. I think I did the math a couple of years ago, and it was like I would average maybe like 4 to 5 auditions a week. Wow. So some weeks there's, like 2 a day, and then some weeks there's none, and you're convinced that you're never going to work again.
What? You're saying that like imposter syndrome is a thing that you feel? Gee, I've never heard of that before.
Oh, wow.
But I think what was fun about watching your reel and seeing, because a lot of the shows that you've been on are just not shows that I've watched, but seeing you go from show to show, you are very diverse, from playing a villain to like a clueless lawyer to all this stuff. Do you have any actors or movies or TV shows that you credit like as inspiration to the way you like act or the things that you do?
Oh, that's an excellent question. I am very this is the most pretentious way I can think to phrase this. I'm very grounded in the classical tradition.
Okay.
I'm classically trained, but unfortunately, that also means that I have a deep background with actors like the aforementioned Kenneth Branagh, who are not the subtlest of actors.
You don't say.
Yeah. I don't know if you've watched him recently, but he's a bit grandiose. And that was very much an early influence of mine. Like similar to Monty Python, like I would listen to just all these old recordings of John Gielgud and Richard Burton, and just these fucking purple performers who are just singing everything all the time. And I fell in love as an actor with the idea of finding a way to modernize and Americanize that. But it was still very much I would say an outside-in method of performing that I moved to the city with. I think my training helped foster that a little bit. So it was never with the intention of like being fake or phony or putting on voices or anything like that. Like I was always very much committed and intrigued by very grounded things. But I think it took a while before I found newer influences, and I found just the comfortability in myself of not knowing where I'm going. I think one of the things about classical acting tends to be that it is a very rehearsed sort of thing.
Right.
It's classical music. It ain't jazz. And I think contemporary American acting, certainly like post method, is very much a much more organic sort of thing.
Yeah, the way I trained was more in like the action of the intention. Like you are trying to do something to someone else, and like that was very much more of a like an inside to outside. Like your mission is to affect what is happening around you, and the tools that you're using are your verbs, which.
I remember those verbs.
Oh, them verbs. Oh, I had the actor's thesaurus.
You got to, because as soon as you need a verb, you're like, what is a verb? I don't know.
To needle. I needle him. I don't even know what that means. A prod. A burn. I loved it though. Like,
it's a very helpful way to think of things.
Yeah, it's like a really punk rock way to do it. Just like a really simple, just like effective, like. Bah, him. I punch him with my words when I say I'm dumping him.
Ooh, punch is a good one.
There you go.
Yeah. Right. One day I'll be an actor again. It's fine.
Again, like you ever stopped.
I'm gonna listen. I gotta get some crow's feet, and then I'll get back in it.
Oh, is that how that goes?
I want to be like a dame.
You want to be Dame, like Dame Judi Dench?
Maybe.
I mean, right?
Why not?
Who wouldn't want to be?
There's nothing like a dame.
Here's a dumb question.
I love dumb questions.
On the interview show that I host, thinking a lot about like your horror influences as well as your background in the theater. Something that we don't see a lot of is like horror plays. You know, like the only one I can like truly conjure in my brain is The Woman in Black. You know, where do you think like that's going, or do you think there's like a space for it?
I definitely do. Like that's what I write.
Yeah, I was wondering if that was sort of like your track on.
And it is horror is such a great genre for the stage.
Yeah.
And I like I say this with the context again of being I will unashamedly assert that any good story is a horror story anyway. Like, because it basically just comes down to stakes and how abstract those stakes become. But Macbeth is a horror story.
Yeah.
Hamlet is a horror story. King Lear is basically a horror story. It's fucking torture porn.
Yeah, that's
you're
true.
gouging an old man's eyes out. So like there is a rich theatrical tradition of horror on stage. Most of the Roman tragedies are horror stories, and very supernatural ones at that. And horror tends to be very nihilistic, or at least existential, which the Greeks tend to rely on. Because everything's out of our control and we're all being punished by uncaring and capricious gods. So like horror and theater go together like fucking peanut butter and chocolate. Like it's great. And it's very frustrating as particularly as an American horror playwright, but also as an indie American horror playwright, because there are not a few of us. There are us out there. And yet every like third Halloween, the New York Times will run like another like 5,000 word article in the art section being like, why doesn't anybody write horror plays anymore?
Yeah.
And you'll be like, hello, hi.
I've been doing that.
You passed on reviewing 10 of my productions. Perhaps if you had come. But it is hard.
Yeah,
it is hard to write horror.
It feels that getting that traction is difficult because a lot of like the modern zeitgeist about horror like is from movies
Jump scare,
like
gore.
Hostel and gore and things like that.
And
where it's associated with like popcorn and putting your arm around your gal and like that very not simple, but like commercialized version of horror.
And it's campier. There's a style of horror, and you'll see it on the stage. You'll see it with, especially in like Evil Dead the musical and stuff like that. It's,
right.
It's a lot of fun.
I love
It's a lot of fun. Reanimator the musical was really fun too.
Yeah. Repo the Genetic Opera is real crazy.
Yeah.
And I loved it.
Yeah. But as far as like the stuff that I do and am interested in is the stuff that is not nice to the audience.
Yeah.
Emotionally. Like, I am not interested in shocking. I am interested in creating I do like shocking, but not like an effect, not like a blood, like that paroxysm of surprise that is the jump scare. I'm more interested in cultivating an aura of dread that makes you want to stop watching the play. You don't feel safe. I have several scripts where it explicitly says in the script, in the stage directions, that there is no curtain call for this, because that will completely dispel that final feeling that the audience will have of like, I don't feel good.
Yeah.
You can't then be like, thank you, hello.
Like the anti-catharsis.
Yeah.
Where it's just like, wow.
Yeah, exactly. And theater is really good at creating that, because you are even more so than movies, you are trapped in your seat.
Yeah.
Society will shun you if you get up.
Yeah.
And oftentimes, like, especially if it's an indie show, you can't use that exit anymore anyway, because now it's being used as like entrances for the actors, so you're stuck in a dark room, and you're kind of at the mercy of what the story is going to do, unlike a movie which can show you things and you like have to look away or something like that. With the stage in particular, you can't focus.
Like there's nowhere else to look. Really.
Yeah. And you also can't then manipulate the audience and say like you have to look at what is happening in this person's hands right now. You have to look at the whole macro thing.
Yeah.
And so the story dynamics have to be the thing that really starts to horrify you. And when it's done right, it is it's better than the best horror movie. And weirdly enough, my favorite horror movie that can be described as torture porn sometimes is just 4 people in a room, basically. It's a movie called Martyrs that is just one of the reasons why it is.
I think that was on a list of, because I got into a kick. I think it's because I was talking to Scott about your interest in horror that I got in an internet wormhole of what are the movies that are so disturbing, and I think Martyrs was on the list, Raw and Antichrist, and these movies where it seems like their claim to fame is and people walked out during Cannes, and it's just what, so I think that was on a list. I think that was there.
It's on a bunch of lists like that because it is it's a hard movie to even recommend. I would not recommend it to anybody, and yet it's my favorite horror movie.
Sure.
And you get that kind of intimacy with horror theater and stuff like that. And even the way I'm describing it right now sounds like it's punishment, and it's not. It's entertainment.
Yeah.
But it's it's like spicy food. You gotta want to be scared. So if you come to a horror play, you got to use the tools that only theater can use, and that is that intimacy. That is that seeing something happen in the flesh live. And so you can't rely on special effects. You can't rely on a lot of gore because that's going to take the audience out of it. They're going to know they're watching an effect.
Right.
So it has to be I have one script that's one of my more infamous ones that gets passed around every now and then, where for half of the show someone has been glued to a bed, and it's the simplest thing. It's just someone who can't get out of the bed. And the way you achieve the effect is you just put some Velcro under there, so when they finally do pull themselves out, you hear the ripping noise. But
that's so cool.
Until that happens,
I'm obsessed.
It's just an actor can't move, and that's terrifying. And that's just something that can be done with the body.
What is that? May I ask the name of that play?
That's called Tenants, or When the Hornet Arrives.
When the Hornet Arrives. Cool.
You don't want to read that because it's about someone moving into a new apartment.
You know what? I'm already terrified that someone's gonna I might as well just pour that into something, you know? Just be you know what? I'm just gonna lean into the generalized anxiety.
What's the worst that could happen?
You know what? It's better to be anxious because I made myself anxious versus my body making me anxious for no reason,
That's a huge argument towards the importance of horror as a genre, though, is that it puts a face to anxiety that you might have, and once there's a face to something, it's infinitely more dealable than if it's just free floating and you're no.
It's funny as we talk about it. I feel like it's not that I'm not a horror fan. It's that I just don't like the gore and the torture porn. I think I'm a thriller and a suspense person, and I think in horror when it's done right, and I've seen one of my favorite things about Mac is some of the stuff that he's done. He's taken things that you would think would only work in film and puts them on the stage. And I don't know if you ever got to see Frankenstein Upstairs.
Oh, yeah.
So it's just, so that I would consider that horror. It's about these people who move in under an older woman, and it's in a world where Mary Shelley never wrote Frankenstein.
Okay.
It doesn't exist. And
Pity.
And the woman living upstairs, her last name is Frankenstein, and the short end of it is that this lesbian couple living together in his apartment, one of them dies, and so this other woman that they don't know kind of inserts herself into their lives to try and bring her back to life, and then it works.
Cool.
And everything that unfolds, and that's a play that I remember leaving going, what just happened?
Yeah.
Because the whole second act blindsides you.
Yeah.
And so while talking through this, I feel like I would definitely enjoy. Excuse me.
It's okay.
I would definitely enjoy.
Okay to get emotional.
Yeah. Listen,
We're
talking about theater brings you to weeping.
I think I would definitely enjoy horror theater more than I would probably enjoy horror TV movies. Because I feel like a lot of it's definitely driven more on suspense and making you feel uncomfortable and those kind of controlled moments.
Yeah. One of my other favorite horror...
The Crucible's a horror play.
The Crucible's a horror play.
I was in that one.
Oh, yeah. It took for the proctors. It's fucking horror.
We trapped people in a black box.
Yeah.
And had it was in the round, and I was like, did I ever do a play that was really scary? And I was one of the young accusers. I was one of the townspeople.
I saw Lady Proctor with the devil.
She's spreading out her wings, and that whole thing. And
Yeah.
like I remember us as a group, like this group of young women, like getting together before the trial scene, and like we would say the Lord's Prayer. It was the creepiest shit I've ever been a part of. And now that I'm thinking of it, I'm like, oh my God, what happened? I'm so sorry. Like we're digging deep. Like,
No, I love that.
Yeah.
That is a scary
it's
fucking
so
play.
spooky.
One of the scariest plays I've ever seen is just a comedy called Exit the King, an Ionesco comedy it's Lotzie. I saw the Broadway production of it 1,000 years ago with Jeffrey Wright and Susan Sarandon, and it's a king who is just being told he's gonna die. That's the play, and he's like, no, I'm not, and he's all goofy and stuff like that, but the kingdom is like crumbling around him, and it's an hour and a half of just being told, you're gonna die. It doesn't matter how rich or powerful or strong you are, you're gonna die. And it got to the point where you, as an audience member, wanted to be like, stop the play. Stop reminding me of this.
I gotta go.
I'm very upset. And that's the sort of feeling that good horror can give you. It's just like, I don't like this.
I don't want to do it. Yeah, the sign for me of a movie that I'm really invested in is if I'm doing one of these. Like, I don't want to look, but I'm looking.
It's like me in The Ring when she's climbing out of the TV, and I'm like slowly like hiding under the blanket.
The Ring is one of my like top 5 favorite. And
it's one of those ones that like got me back into horror.
Yeah.
That and a really weird indie movie. Anna Faris was in it. It's called May.
Yeah, May's really fun.
Oh, I loved May. I was obsessed with May because I was like, this is so creepy. Like I just loved creepy.
Angela Bettis, is that her name?
Oh, maybe.
Yeah.
Do you know May?
I'm not familiar.
It's about
cool.
this. It's about this young woman who's like the daughter of like a debutante, and she has like a lazy eye, and her mom's really mean to her, and she doesn't have a lot of friends because she's just like a weirdo kid. And her mom's like, well, you know what? If you can't find a friend, make one. And she like gives her a doll, and she grows up, and she's like this really socially awkward girl. She decides that she's going to make a friend using body parts of people she meets. It's so good.
Yeah.
It's that final shot. Oh, it was like that moment of like, I'm terrified, but my heart is so warm.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I'm so happy, but I'm like, why am this? What? Oh.
Yeah.
Fuck, I gotta watch May again. I think I'm gonna come back next week with May.
All right.
On the list. I think I'm gonna be like, I watched May.
Stay tuned.
Important things. Oh, damn, May, man.
Before we wrap up, Nat, I wanted to
great.
ask, do you have any books or plays that are in the pipeline for coming out soon? This will air a week from today.
Yeah.
So anything coming up that
Surprise,
you
we're
want?
recording on Monday.
Anything that you want to promote or things that you're working on are going to be in, either on TV, theater, things you're writing? The answer can be no, but I figure I would ask.
I'm in an episode of Instinct.
Cool.
I don't know when it airs.
All right.
So that's not helpful.
Yeah. No, well, people just look out for
Just
it.
watch
Fine.
Instinct,
There you
and
go.
maybe I'll be there.
Just follow Nat on social media.
Yeah,
they'll
not,
let you know.
Not Facebook, because I'm not there anymore.
No, you're not, but you're on the Twitters.
I sure am. No, I don't have anything firm up.
Yeah.
I'm God willing, like 95% done with the first draft of a novella.
Oh, cool.
And like 30% done with a manuscript of a new book, and a couple of scripts, and just starting to work on a opera libretto, and working on. I'm trying to put together a new album now. I'm a
cool.
Singer-songwriter as well.
Excellent. That's
Why not?
awesome. What kind of music?
Do it.
I write like 60s folk pop.
Nice.
Fun.
Yeah.
That's
Although
very
I also
cool.
have a bunch of like song cycles, some of which are horror. One was sci-fi for the Sex with Robots
that's awesome.
Festival.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so I would like to record a new album. I have 3 albums out already.
I should connect you with my spouse, who used to be in a folk rock band and does guitar writing, singing. Sounds like me.
If only we were like nearby.
If only you knew her.
If only we weren't so far away from her.
It'll never happen.
But that's awesome.
Yeah.
Do you have any idea when that album might be actually a thing people can hear, or is it still it's still just kind of in the early
Someone
stages?
else who's like put albums out, like, no, it'll be out when it's out.
When I record tracks, I'm not embarrassed by it.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Or just not embarrassed enough by it.
That's usually
There you
the
go.
limit.
That's-
Like
that
I
is-
found. It's like when the excitement outweighs the crippling fear, you know you've hit a good sweet spot.
You've done it. But just listeners, go out and find Steal the Stars
Yes, on everything. Go buy the book.
podcast.
Listen to the podcast.
Find the book. Consume it.
Yes.
Consume mass quantities.
Eat it.
My conehead children.
Yeah, exactly. Just devour
Eat
it.
the book.
Tweet me pictures of you eating this book. Please don't. I'm not in Devore.
Please let the listeners know your Twitter handle. They can find you.
I'm at Nat Cassidy.
There you go.
And on Instagram, I'm at Catnacity because someone took Nat Cassidy.
Hey, idiot, who has that? Give it to Nat.
That's
You
like
never use it.
Rachel's other podcast, the actual Twitter handle they want, someone's had it not tweeted for 3 years.
3 years, yeah.
And they
It's fine.
can't get it.
It's fine. I'm bitter. It's cool. You know what? I'm going to bring myself out of bitter, and I'm going to take a moment and thank John Presnell for the use of the song Aurora off the album Fair Game featuring Stefan Remble. Thank you so much for our intro, outro. It's
I love
the
that
perfect
song so much.
It is so good.
bookend
It's a great
for
song.
this movie podcast.
If you're a fan of that song, go pick up the record.
Yeah,
it's on,
find
'cause
it.
It's great.
Just go find John Presnell and tell him we said hey.
Yeah,
And
please
that he's
do.
amazing.
He is.
Yeah.
Also, I want to thank Katie Bug for the design of our logo that we use all over the social medias. It is us from an earlier time, but I've learned to love it.
Yeah.
Because it's still us.
You know,
but-
nostalgia.
Nostalgia! But thank you for that logo. We love it. We put it everywhere. Eventually, we'll probably put it on stickers and t-shirts. Who
Yeah,
knows?
you guys remember when nostalgia was a thing? It was
Yeah.
great.
I remember
fine.
nostalgia. Oh man, you're nostalgic about nostalgia.
Well,
the walls with the
nostalgia.
walls.
Nostalception.
It's nostalgia all the way down.
And now, of course, we have one final question for you, Nat.
Yes.
Rachel, if you will.
Nat, as you are aware, we ask a question.
Yes.
And I must know, as someone who consumes mass horror, if you could choose any movie trope to be true in your life, what movie trope would that be?
Oh, I knew you were going to ask this, and
It's okay. We never prepare either. It's
it's a good question. All right. This might seem off-brand for me,
Okay.
but I think one of the reasons why, as we've already touched on, horror is such an important and cathartic genre is that it allows us to rehearse the worst-case scenario
Sure.
and prepare for it. So if there was a movie trope that I hope occurs every day of my life, it's that the good guys win.
There you go. All right.
That'd be really nice if that happened.
I would agree. Especially considering the world we're living in these days. Yes, I
Yeah.
would love for the good guys to
Wouldn't
win.
a Hollywood ending just be great?
Yeah.
That would be really nice.
Yeah. And then they kiss.
And
Yeah,
then they kiss.
and nothing is wrong.
Oh, man.
I say that fully owning the fact that if I ever wrote an ending like that, I would be furious at myself.
Of course. You'd be like, what is this garbage?
What have I
Happily
done?
ever after.
Yeah.
Damn it.
Well, Matt, thank you so much
thank
for being
you,
on the
Nat.
show.
Thank you guys.
I've been wanting to have you for ages. I'm a huge fan of the stuff that you do, and I can't wait to see more
Well,
stuff.
I'm a huge fan now.
There you go. All right. There's
Conversion
nothing wrong with
therapy.
that.
There
you
it
go.
is.
I'm still on the fence about me.
That's fair.
But I
It's
appreciate
okay.
No, it's
You don't
legit.
have to be a fan of you.
That's true.
I believe in you enough.
Thank you.
Thank you, listeners, so much for joining us on this episode. I also believe in you.
And before we wrap, the big announcement that I mentioned earlier, as of when you're listening, we have officially joined the Certain Point of View Network. Yay!
Yes, we are now on Certain POV.
A podcast network where two of my other podcasts already live. Now
Yeah.
a third shall reside.
We're like the redheaded stepchild of your podcast. The last one picked.
The last one picked.
Even though one of your podcast hosts is a redhead, what's happening? What's the world come to?
So yeah, Screen and Snark will be on certainpov.com.
Yeah.
We are going to do some more collabs. Of course, Rachel and I have both been guests on other podcasts on the network.
Yeah, so
We're hoping to do more crossover with that the other way around.
Yeah, Yeah, definitely. So hop on with us to the Certain POV crew with shows like Another Pass with Case Aiken.
The flagship, sometimes Star Wars podcast called A Certain Point of View.
Yeah, if you love listening to Matt, check out his video game podcast, Fun and Games, and Reignite, which is about Mass Effect.
I like that you did the air quotes
I did.
with your voice, you did with your actual fingers.
Someone hire me to do VO. I'm just saying, I'm very expressive.
But yes, we're really excited to be a part of the network. The network also has a Discord server. If you go to the website, you can find that as well.
Yeah.
There is now a Screen Snark area where you can chat with us. You can also suggest guests. If you know people who want to talk about movies, we are not super particular about who we talk to.
No.
Please shoot us some suggestions.
But we do pick the cream of the crop.
We do.
It rises. So
it rises.
You can suggest, but we're going to be selective. There you go.
And also chat about movies with us,
Yeah.
along with our fellow Sin POV folks. So yes, that's really exciting.
Yeah.
Go check that out. Of course, I have been your host, Matt, a.k.a. Stormageddon.
I have been Rachel Quirky Shank.
And we will see you at the movies.
Aurora,
I love that we just both went.
Aurora, 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 Aurora. Metal to magnet.